Some people have this idea that you can move to Bali and live on $10 a day. Well, in this video, I'm going to dispel that misconception and tell you what is the real cost of living in Bali in 2022. My name is Adrian Field and I'm an expat entrepreneur who's been living in Bali for the past 4 years. So as I said in the opening of this video, there are just some people who have absolutely no idea what it really costs to live in Bali, or even kind of how things work in terms of rentals and all of that. And I was inspired to make this video today because I was scrolling in Facebook last night, and I'm in one of the Bali real estate groups, or how people find housing here, and somebody had posted this totally delusional thing about that they wanted an ultra modern house with, everything included, electricity and Wi-Fi, and they wanted to live there a long time, but they wanted to pay by month. And I made a video about this already, that if you want to have a villa in Bali, there's almost never going to be a monthly rental situation. Like, that is super, super rare. The way that that works generally is by the year. So already this post was just like completely way off. But a lot of times also in these types of posts, these foreigners think that they can get a gorgeous modern villa for like $1,000 US dollars a month. And that is so unrealistic, especially now post-corona again, where the prices have just gone way, way up. So I kind of want to give you a realistic expectation if you're thinking about moving to Bali, what you can expect to spend. And I'm going to give it from a couple different perspectives. I'm going to tell you about what my cost of living more or less is here for the kind of villa that I live in, and then also tell you how you can live for less, but also how most likely if you want a villa like mine, you'll now end up paying a lot more. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start by sharing with you generally what my cost of living is. And I'm someone, as I said, I've been here 4 years. I actually have a residency visa, so this is going to be needing somewhat modification if you're coming here on a different type of visa, or if you're not planning to live here all year round or whatever. But it'll give you kind of a ballpark understanding of what generally the cost of living here in Bali is. So this villa that I'm living in, I pay the equivalent of 10,000 US dollars a year for. Now, there's a couple things that have to be said in regards to that. Number one, I rented this villa during coronavirus, so I got an incredible deal. And the second one is that I'm actually living in a neighborhood called Kerobokan, and that's right outside of Canggu. I would call it like Canggu adjacent if I was a realtor. But this is not actually Canggu. This area is much more local, and therefore the prices are less than in the Canggu hotspot neighborhoods like Barawa or on Batu Belong, or especially on Prairana, which is like the hottest place now to be. So for example, this villa, I'm kind of expecting my landlord, by the time that my lease is up in May, to increase my rent probably 20, 30 something percent. So I could probably expect to pay $12,000, $13,000, maybe even up to $15,000. I mean, she'll get what she can get out of it, most likely. Now, again, if this villa were actually in Canggu, if it were in Prairana or in Barawa or whatever, then it would easily be 15,000 US dollars a year. Or maybe even more, because again, this villa is quite spacious. It was originally a 3-bedroom. I converted one of the bedrooms into my office. It has a big kitchen. It has closed living, which is very rare to have in Bali. And it's just a really nice villa. You can watch my villa tour if you haven't already. Now the thing is, again, which goes into expenses, is that when you rent a villa for the year, almost nothing is ever included. That means you're responsible for your own electricity, you're responsible for your own Wi-Fi, and you're responsible for staff. So let's get into the costs of all of those things. So an important line item is staff in a villa. Now, for me, I could not live in this villa without having a cleaner, without having a gardener / pool man, because I don't know what it is about living in these types of places like Bali, but every day I wake up, there's just dirt. I'm not a dirty person, but like animals get in here. We've had bats that like poop upstairs. I've had termites that eat the wood furniture, that leave like these little wood shavings. I mean, it's just like, and plus I have a dog. Like, there's just constantly mess, and this house needs daily cleaning, daily maintenance. So I have a pembantu. That's Indonesian. It basically means helper, literally is the translation, or it's kind of like a maid. So I have my pembantu come 6 days a week, and she works generally around 4 hours, maybe 3 to 4 hours a day. And her salary is 2.5 million Indonesian rupiah per month. And that's kind of on the generous side. I know people that have full-time help that pay actually even less than that, but I would not pay someone less than that because I also don't want to be, like taking advantage of what the situation is, or, I just would not feel comfortable paying less than that. And I really like my pembantu. She's a hard worker and I value her. So that's what I pay. And I think that you could generally expect to pay maybe between 2.5 million a month if you have help that comes as regularly as that. I also have someone who takes care of my pool and my garden, and I pay him 1.2 million Indonesian rupiah per month. So I calculated this as my monthly staff is around $250 a month, and that comes out to $3,000 a year. So I think that that's an important factor, that if you are going to be renting your own villa, you will most likely need to staff it yourself, and you can probably expect to pay around $3,000 a year in staff costs. So the next important item to note, how much are you going to probably spend on food? Now me, I do not cook ever. Like when I say ever, I really mean ever. I have never cooked since I've lived in Bali in 4 years. So I either eat out or more often than not order Gojek delivery for literally every meal every day. And I calculate generally I probably spend the equivalent of 10, usually less, but around 10 US dollars per meal. So I calculated my food costs at $600 a month, thinking like, okay, lunch is around $10, dinner is around $10, and my breakfast, I actually put that under my grocery item list because I just have like cereal and a banana and coffee. So I spend around $7,200 a year in food. That's not, counting like if I go out to a restaurant for a fancier meal. This is just sort of like the everyday basics, and I think that that comes out to an average of that. So my next line item, as I mentioned, groceries, because we buy here coffee, cereal, fruit, etc. That's about it for the groceries since I don't cook. And laundry as well. So I send all of my laundry out because I don't have a machine here. And I use probably the most expensive laundry service in Bali. It's nearby, but I've had a lot of bad experiences with laundry, so I would rather pay more and get good service. So every time we do the laundry, it's usually like $12 to $15, and we do that once a week. So anyway, I calculated my grocery/laundry costs at $150 a month, which comes out to $1,800 approximately per year. Now the next cost, as I already alluded to, that if you're renting your own villa, you're going to be responsible for all of the other things like Wi-Fi. So I have Global Extreme, which is the best Wi-Fi that you can have in Bali, and they have different prices depending on what speed that you need. I chose an option that has a good speed that is like guaranteed minimum, and I pay for that. Actually, I pay by year because you get a better price if you just pay the whole lump sum up front, and that comes out to around 300 US dollars a year. Okay, next cost. The way that electricity works in Bali is that you have a meter that is on your house, and every time you need to add electricity, you can either just buy it from your mobile banking app, or you can go to an Indomaret, like any kind of convenience place, and buy what's called pulsa, buy electric credits that you then plug in to your meter. So every time I buy electricity, I spend 500,000 Indonesian rupiah, which is like 33 US dollars, and I usually probably do that like 3 times a month. So I'm around 100 US dollars a month on my electric bill. And I mean, this house does require a decent amount of electricity. You can see behind me, we have the pool pump going. I have the air conditioner in my bedroom running probably at least 12 hours a day. So, I mean, I am alone in this house, so it's not like all of the air conditioners are going at all times. If I were a family here, it would probably be more expensive. But again, just kind of depending on how much you're using the air conditioners, how many you're using at once, you can probably expect to spend at least 100 US dollars a month just on electricity. Now, another item that you want to consider, depending on how you're planning to come here and how long you're planning to stay, is what is your visa cost. So this for me is different than it would be probably for you. I have, as I said, a kitas. I also have a business here. So I have expenses related to running my business. I have a local accountant. I have a virtual office that I pay for by the year. And then my kitas is renewed every 2 years. I have an agent that does that. So like my visa costs probably aren't going to be the same as yours, but I just estimated like around $1,000 a year for visa costs, because if you come here on what the government is calling the digital nomad visa, which is just the social visa that everybody probably in Canggu has been using as a digital nomad visa for many years before the government made that announcement, I think that costs a few $100s when you first apply for it. and you actually, I don't know, maybe this has changed, maybe it's not, but back when I had that visa, you had to get it outside the country. So you would have to go to like Singapore or something and actually go to the embassy and pick it up there. And then you would come back, and every 30 days after the first 60 days, you had to pay to extend it. So every time that was like 800,000 or something to extend it. So generally, I just estimated at around 1,000, because if you use that visa, you have to do 4 extensions, you have to apply for it in the first place, you maybe have to pick it up outside of Indonesia, and you'd have to do that twice a year. Or if you have the business visa, which is valid for 1 year, but you can only stay in Indonesia up to 60 days at a time, so you're kind of going back and forth. So just kind of be aware, depending on what visa that you want to have, of how you're going to have to deal with that logistically, how often you come in and out of the country, how often you renew it, the visa, agent fees, all of that stuff. It is just a factor. So again, I said around $1,000 a year. Now, some other things that I'm not going to include in my yearly total would be things like motorbike rental, because I actually bought my Vespa outright, so I don't pay any monthly rental fees for that. And then you may also want to think about health insurance. I actually just signed this morning a local health insurance policy with Allianz, and it's so ridiculously cheap. I'm paying like $600 a year to have a policy that covers me completely in Indonesia with no deductible. So you definitely want to have health insurance if you're living here. You cannot get a local policy like that if you do not have KITAS, so you will need to get some other type of travel-related insurance, because trust me, this is a dangerous place. I made a whole video about insurance and the necessity to have it here in Bali. You don't want to be one of those people who ends up with a GoFundMe page because you have like $20,000 in hospital bills, God forbid. So anyway, with everything that I already mentioned, my house, staff, food, groceries, internet, electric, visa fees, we come out to a grand total of $24,500 US a year. So that is more or less what it costs to live my lifestyle right now. But for example, as I said, most likely this rent in the house will go up when my lease needs to be extended again. So that could go up to maybe $5,000 a year extra. So we would then be at $29.5 thousand a year. And as I said, if you wanted to find a villa like this one in Canggu itself, you're probably looking at around $29,500 total, with all of those things that I mentioned. The fact that the villa would be around minimally 200 million rupiah per year. And again, keep in mind that you will have to pay that up front. That is a yearly cost. It is nearly impossible to find something that's a villa that's private for rent by the month. You always have to pay up front for the year. So I think that that is kind of a big hurdle for many younger nomads who come here and they don't have just that amount of cash to like put down for upfront situation. Now this is kind of negotiable depending on who the landlord is. Sometimes you can negotiate, can I pay 6 months? Can I pay 8 months? I mean, they want as much money as possible. And more often, even now, I'm seeing in the rental groups is that landlords are looking to get at least 2 years up front. So the longer you plan to stay in Bali and the more cash you have available to put up front, the better situation you're in. Again, also because rents keep rising really quickly, so the more that you can lock in at once, the better. So just keep that in mind. I think that to live my kind of lifestyle, you probably need to spend around $30,000 a year in Bali. Now I'm going to tell you how you can obviously live for less than that. When I first arrived in Bali nearly 4 years ago, I did not have as much money, nowhere near really, like my business was a third the size that it is now, and I came here like at a time in my life when I kind of was struggling a little bit. So you can definitely live for a lot cheaper if you either live in a guest house or if you share a villa, like if you just rent a room in a villa. And the advantage of both of those situations is that in that case, not only are you paying your rent on a monthly basis, but usually everything is included, like the electricity and the Wi-Fi, and you're not having to pay for staff because either the guest house is staffed already, or if you're sharing a villa, like a lot of times if you're just taking a room in a villa where there's already other people, they've calculated that price in and you're just paying like whatever, a flat fee. So I calculated that at around like, let's say 9 million rupiah per month if you want to get a nice room in a villa. I mean, when I first moved here, I was staying in a guest house. I think that costs like 4.5 or 5 million a month. So again, there's even less, but I would not recommend that certainly if you're going to stay here for a while, because that was like a teeny tiny little room. So I'm saying for around 7,200 US dollars a year, you can get good accommodations, and I'm also including in that price your electric, the cleaning, and the Wi-Fi. So you're kind of flat at 7,200. I'm not changing my food. So if you're still planning to spend around $20 a day for food, you're at $7,200 again per year. I'm saying groceries, laundry, same as what I spend, so around $1,800. I mean, you can do less than that. Go to a less expensive laundry. If you don't spend as much on coffee as I do, like my coffee is really expensive here. All of that stuff. Visa fees, I'm keeping the same at $1,000. So in that case, if we're living in a less expensive way, we are at 17,200 US dollars a year. So you can still live really comfortably on that. I mean, you have probably a really nice room in a nice villa in Canggu or in Ubud, and you can eat out every day for every meal and all of that. So you're at around 7,200. And again, keep in mind that if you're renting a motorbike, I calculated that at around 960 US dollars a year total, because I think that I estimated around 1 million Indonesian rupiah per month for your motorbike. And if you want to have health insurance, I don't know what that will cost you, but for me, that was around $600 a year. Now, I also want to give some comparison and insight of why I think Bali, for example, is not that cheap of a place. Obviously, I've already given you the numbers. You can decide if that is cheap for you or not cheap. But I'm actually planning to move to Europe now for probably most of the year. And I realized it's not that much more expensive for me to live in Europe than it is in Bali. Now, obviously depends where in Europe, but I'm actually looking to live in either Madrid or Lisbon. So I've been looking at apartments that I would rent for the whole year with the money up front to get a better price. And in that case, we're looking at around 2,000 euros a month. And now, obviously, I'm also really lucky right now because the US dollar is extremely strong against all major currencies. The euro is actually worth, at the time that I'm recording this, a little bit less than $1 US. So I calculated what I would spend on housing at around $22,000 a year, because I would expect to get some kind of discount if I'm paying the whole year up front. So for me, that would be like a nice, at least one bedroom situation, modern, in a nice area. And that's important to me. I'm not going to go and move into Europe and live in like a studio apartment. I'm not looking to go back to when I was 20 years old living in New York City in a shoebox apartment. I still want to have a nice quality of life. So I'm also considering food probably in Europe is around $900 a month. So I'm considering $30 a day. Because actually I was surprised, for example, the almost 2 months that I spent in Barcelona, like to order a delivery, which you do via Glovo, not Gojek, I wasn't spending that much. I mean, it was maybe 10 to 15 euros a meal. So yeah, I would say around $30 a day. And I actually, when I'm in Europe, I tend to like make food myself a bit more. Like I make my own breakfast of eggs. Sometimes I even make my own lunch. I make a sandwich or whatever. So around $900 I think is fair per month, or we're at $10,800 per year on food. Obviously, I would probably be going out more. Hopefully, I'll be more social in Europe than I am in Bali, so there would probably be some additional cost to like eating out in a nicer restaurant, which I want to do. Internet, I have no idea what that costs in Europe. I'm estimating around $400. Electric, again, I don't really know firsthand, but I'm estimating maybe $1,200. That's probably now even too little, because I know that they're having an energy crisis in Europe and like prices are really high, so maybe it would be more than that. I don't know. So long story short though, I'm estimating in Europe that my cost of living would be around 36,400 US dollars a year. And as I said, if my rent goes up here and I'm spending around $30,000 to live in Bali, I'm only like $6,400 less. I actually forgot to mention, I would like to have a cleaner in Europe as well. So I forgot to add $2,000 a year for a cleaner to come probably twice a week. So I estimated that at $160 a month, or as I said, $2,000 a year. That's where I got $36,400 a year. So for only $6,400 more a year, I could be living a nice cosmopolitan life in Europe versus Bali. So I think that just gives some kind of context to all of it, that if you are an expat or nomad and you're considering where the different places that I can live, how far will my money go, depending on how much you want to be spending, how much income you have. Bali, it's not the cheapest place. Yes, you can live here for around $18,000 a year if you want to, and you would have a nice lifestyle, but again, you have to consider the fact that you're renting either a room in a guest house or a room in someone else's villa, so you kind of are lacking the privacy. But I know a lot of people actually, they like to share a space. Like me, I am kind of agoraphobic. Like I really like my personal space, and I like my own private home. I don't like to share a space. So for me, that's really important, maybe not for other people. So yeah, but again, I would not have the misconception that you can come here and live in a big villa for, even $1,000 a month if you're trying to look for a place by month. Again, you need to come here with at least a year's rent up front. And the other items, again, it's kind of a sliding scale, but I think that I gave a pretty good and reasonable cost estimate for what those things are. There are cheaper places to live if you're a digital nomad and you are kind of just starting out in your career or life. I would say probably Thailand is actually cheaper than Indonesia, and has a really good quality of life. So all things to consider. So I hope that this video was informative and gave you some more insight on what you can expect if you come and live here in Bali. Until the next time, everybody, take care, and I'll see you later.